Welcome to session 1.2, Framing Inquiry, Theory and Empiricism, as part of the Sheri 2016 course. I'm Rachel Elway, your presenter for this session. The Sheri course is built around the design, conduct and reporting on a scholarly project. That may be one of three particular areas: research, which looks into what things are and whether they work, how they work and why do they work; evaluation, that asks questions such as how well something works, does it meet standards and should we continue or change it; and innovation is how do we do something new, what happens if we do something new. While we will be looking at asking scholarly questions in section 1.4, this presentation focuses on how you can approach inquiry. So, what is inquiry? Well, it's the developing of knowledge and understanding in a focused and structured way. It's about organising knowledge and engaging in systematic inquiry, exploring through experimentation, and using testable and predictable models and theories. Now, there are many ways to structure inquiry, but that really depends on your assumptions about reality and knowledge. So let's have a look at those. We can consider the twin concepts of ontology and epistemology. Ontology is about the study of being, and it asks questions about what exists, what is real, what do things have in common. And so in terms of ontological approaches, you might consider whether or not the thing that you want to explore, the way that learners think or respond, the approach that you might take is real. Does it actually exist, or is it part of many different things? And what does it have in common with other things? Is it similar to certain things or different from different things? Epistemology is the study of knowledge, truth and belief. And you may therefore wonder about how do we know about a certain thing? How do we investigate it? What kinds of methods are we going to employ? So epistemology is important because it actually allows us to think about how we know something, whereas ontology is important because it's about studying and understanding whether things do or not exist. And both are required in structured inquiry. For example, an ontological question would be asking whether a particular phenomenon that you're interested in does actually exist. What kind of thing is it? Is it a thought, a concept? Is it a physical thing? And so on. I also ask, what other things is it like? Is it like things we've seen before, and therefore does it share certain things in common with them? Might we look at them or investigate them in similar ways? And therefore, can you go ahead and treat this thing in a similar way to the things to which it at least appears to be similar? Epistemology is about what kinds of knowledge do we already have of this particular phenomenon? What kinds of knowledge do we need that we're going to explore in a particular study? And how will we know and what will we know about it from this study? And therefore, it's important in terms of choosing method, i.e. how we're going to investigate something rather than whether or not it actually exists in the first place. So there are clear implications both for theory and method. And indeed, theory and empiricism should be seen not as two separate things, but as the opposite sides of a coin that collectively defines what scholarship is. Immanuel Kant said that theory without experience is empty, but experience without theory is blind. Theory guides our approach to empiricism. It directs us to attend to certain things. It directs us to approach things in certain ways. And theory also explains the findings from empiricism. And therefore we can think about theory and empiricism being locked into a dance where you move backwards and forwards between one and the other, rather than being two completely separate concepts. Now, a theory has been defined as a set of interrelated constructs, definitions and propositions that present a systematic view of phenomena by specifying relations amongst variables, with the purpose of explaining and predicting the phenomena. To be a theory, it must be testable. It must be able to be confirmed or rejected consistently. We should also understand that theories are provisional. They are trajectories towards truth, but they are not in and of themselves truth. Theory is created, and regularly new theories come along that disprove or improve on the previous theory, and therefore theory is temporary. It also passes over time as our understanding improves. And as you use theory in inquiry, there are two kinds of theory that you need to be attentive to. One is the theories of the phenomena itself, So, for instance, if you were interested in how students learn communication skills, there would be theories of learning, theories of communication, and theories of learning communication skills. But you also need to engage with theories of inquiry. Those are the epistemological theories that actually talk about how you're going to inquire about these things. Are you going to interview people? Are you going to observe them? Are you going to measure them? Are you going to look at the outputs from a communication training session, and so on? So we can think about two distinct and intersecting theories, one about what you're looking at and one about how you're going to look at it. When you look at empiricism, it is based on understanding knowledge from our senses, what we can see, hear, touch, smell, taste, and so on. But principally, knowledge comes from observing the real world. And it's where we also test our theories. Theories are good in theory, but they need to be tested in the real world if they're going to have any actual application or utility for us. And therefore, we do this through experiments, the most common kind of empiricism. We may do forms of measurement and tracking, or we may engage in aspects of phenomenology in its broader sense, which is about tracking, describing, recording, understanding the way that the world works around us. The process of empiricism can be considered to go through a number of discrete steps. First, we build experience. We start to build some understanding about what it is we're looking at. We describe it, we draw it, we illustrate it, we look at how often it occurs. We then might move on to classification, which is, as we said earlier, an ontological question, as in what kind of thing is this? And does it have something similar with things that would seem to be like it? We might then start moving to quantification, which is we can then start to say it happens this regularly, it happens at this time, it happens this much. We can look for relationships between factors within this, so it may say these things seem to cause these things, or at least these things seem to occur together. And we can gradually build models that provide an approximation to the truth, what we call theory, descriptions of how something or a phenomenon actually works. And as Gorham states, the ultimate arbiter is not faith or utility or logic or even truth, but the empirical world itself. In looking at this area, we can consider a number of paradigms that define the way that we structure our inquiry. First one we can look at is based on our ontological understanding. That's to do with being realist or nominalist. A realist stance says things exist in the world, absolutely, independent of whether or not they're observed. Nominalist says that things depend entirely on whether or not they are observed or whether they are thought by a person. A positivist approach says that the scientist stands outside the research, that the research can be conducted entirely objectively and the scientist is always on the outside. A post-positivist approach, on the other hand, says the scientist is never absent from their research and must be considered as part of the research system. In terms of human nature, we can either look at determinist approaches, which say that human beings, or whatever it is that we're looking at, will respond consistently and mechanically to certain stimuli. Certainly this is true largely in the physical world, but it's rather less the case in the educational and social world. This is contrasted with voluntarism, which is down to individuals having free will and the ability to perceive and change their understanding and their motives and their approach to things that don't necessarily therefore respond to a mechanistic causal stimulus. And we can also look at nomothetic as opposed to ideographic approaches to methods. A nomothetic approach looks for broad generalizations. It looks to control and structure research or inquiry so that it can say something about a subject in general, whereas an ideographic approach focuses on the specific. It can look at, for instance, a particular context or a particular setting and not worry about the extent to which things generalize to a broader area. And one of the things I'm sure you will have encountered is the contrast between qualitative and quantitative research approaches. Now, this is something that a lot of people worry about, but essentially qualitative or quantitative approaches are tactics. They are ways of collecting data. And they can fall in any of these spectra. You can use qualitative and quantitative within ideographic and within nomothetic approaches. You can look for the specific or you can look for the general using any of these approaches. so that it's not necessarily always the appropriate question to ask whether something is qualitative or quantitative, because that's just how you do it, but rather what are the underlying assumptions and the paradigms that are being employed by yourself or by others in taking a study forward. So in summary, inquiry is central to scholarship, to research, evaluation, and innovation. Inquiry has ontological dimensions. You have to ask what exists and what things are like. It also has epistemological dimensions, asking about what we know and how we can go about knowing it. We've looked at theory, which are essentially propositions about how the world works, or at least aspects of the world works. Empiricism, which is about testing or generating knowledge based on real-world experience. That knowledge is usually encapsulated in the form of theory, and therefore theory and empiricism are a necessary dyad. They are connected and they are entirely dependent on each other. And there are many, many paradigms one can take for one's research, and essentially it is about selecting the appropriate paradigm so that you can answer the kinds of questions that you're facing.